Part 3. Jesus goes on to say, "Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place." And my Bible has in parentheses, it says, "Whoever reads, let him understand." Whoever reads, let him understand. Let him understand. I believe why that is in parentheses is because that has something significant to do with the person that is reading it. It's saying whoever reads this statement, let him understand what it means for him. That's what that means in parentheses when it says whoever reads, let him understand. Whoever reads this, let him understand it as best he can. And as I read it, I read abomination of desolation. When you see the abomination of desolation, I have seen an abomination of desolation in my lifetime. I have seen an abomination of desolation in my lifetime. It happened in the United States. It happened in our country. God has revealed it to me. In 1776, when the United States was created, the founding fathers created our country on the belief of a creator. They believed in God. And I have found numerous quotes from the founding fathers testifying of their belief in God. George Washington, John Adams, James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, they all have statements and comments about their belief in God. They were strong believers, very strong believers. They didn't believe in a rapture because that didn't exist in 1776. The rapture idea didn't exist until 1830. It was created. But in 1776, this country was founded on the belief in God by the founding fathers. This country, the United States, was built on a foundation of that belief. And I recently did a recording that explains all of that. It's a 4-part series called Defining the Declaration of Independence, about the July 4th celebration that we celebrate every year and remember and honor. It explains everything in that recording about the founding fathers, who they were, what they created when they created the United States. Since that creation, there has been an abomination that has occurred. An abomination in the eyes of God is just something that is absolutely, I can't even think of a word that describes an abomination to the Lord. It's grotesque, it's horrible, it's detestable, it's just the absolute most horrible thing. It's disgusting in the eyes of God. It's absolutely, he can't even look at it. An abomination is something that God just has to he just turns his head to. It's just so horrible. It's so evil. He just has to turn his head. He can't look at it. It's just so, that's what an abomination is. In the eyes of God, that's an abomination. The word desolation means vacant of God. It means God is not there. God is no longer there. That's when something is desolate. It means it's godless. God is not there in that place. If something is desolate, it means God is not there. So desolation means it's godless. God is not in that place. It's a desolate place. And an abomination of desolation happened in my lifetime that I know about. And it happened in this country where God has been taken out of the United States of America. He's been taken out. In 1962, he was taken out of our schools. In 1980, our 10 Commandments was taken out. They were taken out of the school. They were taken out of the minds of our children, out of our minds. I was born in 1976, and God was not in school when I was there. I did not know him there, did not learn about him there, knew nothing about God in school. Didn't know about the 10 Commandments, didn't know they existed. God was taken out of school prior to my birth. This country has become desolate of God. We do not know him anymore. The majority of the people in this world do not know their Creator. They did in 1776. This country was founded on the belief of Jesus Christ. There are numerous statements from the founding fathers testifying to that belief. The Pilgrims came here because they wanted to worship Jesus in a way that they were not allowed to in their other country, so they fled. The same thing that I'm doing with my wife and children. We're fleeing because we want to worship Jesus. We want to follow him. We want to do what he said. We're fleeing. They founded this country on the belief of Jesus Christ and of God. And God was never meant to be taken out of our country. He was never meant to be taken out of our schools. He was never meant to be taken out of our children. He was never meant to be taken out of us. And unfortunately, we don't even hear the truth about Jesus even in church on Sundays. We don't. We're being led by blind shepherds. They're blind. They have been taught. If they're a doctor, they have been taught. That's your sign right there. If he is a doctor, he has been taught. Jesus was not Dr. Jesus Christ. He was not labeled doctor. He was not labeled a Pharisee. Remember that. Do not think that you're learning about God and Jesus in church on Sunday, because chances are you're not hearing the truth. You're probably even hearing a lot of feel-good messages that make you feel good about yourself, because that way you'll come back the next Sunday, because it made you feel good. And you got a free concert. It's like going to a country club at some churches on Sundays. It really does. Some churches are like country clubs. All the money goes towards building fancier buildings and more luxurious amenities and more comfortable seats and more better entertainment and more lights and more smoke and louder sound and coffee bars and, all the luxuries, all the comforts. It's a country club. And we all give a little bit of money so we can have a comfortable country club. And we feel good when we go there because we get a free concert, we hear a feel-good message, and we come back the following Sunday. Well, all we have to do is give a little bit of our money, and we feel good, and we're going to heaven when we die. And everything's great, life is great. We're going to be raptured. That's what we're taught. I know that because I lived most of my life in those churches, hearing those messages, believing those things. It's a lie. It's a deception. That is not of Jesus. That is not of God. That is not what Jesus created. That was not the church that Jesus created. It's not the church the disciples created. It's not. Our church today looks absolutely nothing like the church Jesus created. Nothing. The abomination of desolation, it has occurred in my lifetime. I have seen an abomination of desolation in the United States of America. We no longer serve our Creator. We no longer serve our God. We no longer worship Him. We worship this world. We worship this money. We worship these things. We worship our comforts. We worship our desires. We worship our entertainment. We worship our technology. We worship everything the world has made. And we serve it every day of our life because we worked for it so that we can have it. And we desire it. We live for it. We worship it. That's what worship means. We are living for it. We're not worshiping God. We're not living for Him. We're living for everything the world has made. And we're even giving God 10% of it, thinking that He wants it. It's wrong, and it's an abomination in the eyes of God. It's an abomination in the eyes of God, what we're doing and how we're living our lives and disobeying His commandments all the time. All the time. We watch stuff on TV and lust over other people. We watch TV shows and movies and lust over each other. We commit adultery in our hearts against our spouses every day because of things that we see on the internet, things that we see in our favorite shows on TV, things that we see in movies. We commit adultery in our hearts constantly. Constantly. Even the pastors are committing adultery in their hearts because they're watching those TVs that show those pictures of half-naked women in bathing suits and lingerie. And we see those commercials of people getting drunk and drinking alcohol and debauchery and heresies and covetousness and all of these things. There's 17 works of the flesh that keep us from entering the kingdom of heaven. In Galatians chapter 5, Paul talks about them. There's 17 of them. And they all keep us from entering the kingdom of heaven. And we give in to most of them. Even the pastors give in to most of these works of the flesh. I've defined these words and I know what they mean. Heresies is one that we've done a lot of. The abomination of desolation has happened in the United States of America in my lifetime. It said, whoever reads, let him understand. Well, that's how I understand, and I'm reading it that way. There's an abomination of desolation that has happened in the United States of America. God has been taken out of our country. He's been taken out of our minds. He's been taken out of our hearts. And we continue to send our children. We're proclaiming Christians, going to church on Sunday, claiming to know God, claiming to know Jesus, claiming, but we're sending our children to schools that don't believe in God. God's not even allowed there. And we know that. We know it to be true, and yet we send our children there anyway. Why? Or how could we do that? How could we do that? How could we send our children, whom we claim to love, to a place that's going to teach them about life, and teach them about values, and teach them about truth, and what to believe, and who to serve? And we're allowing our children to be taught to serve money, to serve the world, to serve things created by the world, to get a job, to go to college, to live their life as a slave to this world to the day they die, because they have to have money. That's what they're taught. And we send our children to those places to be taught that. And they learn nothing about God. Nothing. Because He's not allowed there. How can we say that we love God and be willing to do that? We can't. Because we don't truly love Him if we're able to do that. If we're able to do that, we don't truly love our children. That's why I took my kids out of school. Because when God revealed that to me, I couldn't leave them there. I could not do that to my children. I could not dishonor my Creator by sending my children to Satan's institutions. They're His. They are Satan's institutions. If God's not allowed there, Satan is there. And he's teaching your kids about truth and about life and what's important in life. Know that. Stop doing it. He says, when you see the abomination of desolation, let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. So if there are people in Judea right now, flee to the mountains. He says, let him who is on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house. I'll repeat that. Jesus says, do not take anything out of your house. If you're on the housetop, don't go down to take anything out of your house. He says, if you're in the field, don't go back to get your clothes. If you're in the field, don't go back to get your clothes. But he says, woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days. And pray that your flight may not be in winter or on the Sabbath. And the reason he's saying that, he says, for then there will be great tribulation, such has not been since the beginning of the world, until this time, nor shall ever be. This is the great tribulation that's about to happen. It's about to happen. He says, there has not been a greater tribulation than this. Since the beginning of the world until now, until ever and ever will be, this is the greatest tribulation that the world has ever seen, and it's about to happen now. That's what he's saying. And he's saying, unless these days are shortened, no flesh would be saved. That's how bad this tribulation is going to be. He says, unless the days are shortened, he says, if they were allowed to continue, there wouldn't be any flesh left. It would be like the days of Noah, when the only people left on the earth was just Noah and his family. There were no flesh left. No one else was able to be saved. No one was worthy of being saved. No one else believed in God. No one else truly believed in God except Noah and his family, and they were the only ones. And he's saying that when this tribulation occurs, the one that's going to happen, unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. But just like for Noah, for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be short. The elect, the ones that God has chosen, the ones that choose God, those are God's elect. He goes on to say, then, if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. So Jesus is telling us that when this great tribulation occurs, we have to remember again, he's been telling us things in chronological order. He's telling us things in chronological order, from beginning to middle to last. Okay? And he's telling us that when this great tribulation occurs, he says during that tribulation, there's going to be many false Christs and false prophets that are going to rise up and show great signs and wonders to deceive people. And a lot of the elect are going to be deceived. He says even the elect. If possible, even the elect. That means it's possible that the elect will be deceived also. The ones that claim to know God will be deceived. The ones that go to church on Sundays claiming to know God will be deceived. The ones standing in the church teaching and preaching on Sunday will be deceived. Jesus says, "See, I have told you beforehand." He's telling us beforehand this is going to happen. He says, "Therefore, if they say to you, 'Look, he's in the desert,' do not go out. Or 'Look, he is in the inner rooms,' do not believe it. For as the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be." He's telling us, back then, they did not have technology. They did not have lights. They did not have the things that we have seen on TV. They have not had movies to watch. They have never seen lightning in any other form or fashion other than looking up into the sky and seeing it in person. And to them, lightning was an amazing event. To see something like that happen in the sky, it truly to them looked like a bolt coming from God Himself. Because they had never seen movies. They didn't have technology. They didn't have artificial light. They didn't have any of these things that we have been deceived by. Lightning was a big deal. To look up in the sky and see electricity shoot across the sky and light everything up. It was powerful to them. And Jesus is using that as a description about His coming. He says, that's how I'm coming back. There's not going to be any question. You're not going to miss it. Just like you're not going to miss that lightning strike up in the sky and that big bang that happens after it lights up, that thunderclap, you're not going to miss me. It's going to be very evident. Very evident. Everyone will see that. You can't stand outside on a dark night and look up into the sky and miss a lightning bolt and not hear the clap of thunder afterwards if it's close by. You're not going to miss any of that. It's going to be very evident. It's going to be very clear. And He's telling them, don't be deceived. You'll know when it's me. You'll know. There will be no doubt. And He describes, He says, wherever the carcass is, there the eagles will be gathered together. He's letting us know that when He appears, there's going to be carcasses. There's going to be bodies laying around without spirits in them, without souls in them. When He appears, we're going to be in the Spirit at that point when He appears. We're going to be. There will be carcasses laying around. And that's what He's saying there. A carcass is a soulless body. That's what a carcass is. It has no soul in it, but it's a body laying there. And the eagles. There's another place in Revelation where John describes the eagles feeding on the carcasses when this happens. That's what eagles do. They eat dead animals. Eagles feed off of dead flesh. That's why He made that statement. There's going to be dead carcasses laying around, and the eagles will feed on them. He goes on to say, immediately after the tribulation of those days, I'll say that one more time. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. So we're going to have a tribulation. It's going to be greater than any tribulation the world has ever seen since the beginning of creation, or ever will see. People are going to show a lot of wonders and signs, and things will be talked about, and things will be said and shown to deceive people on that day when that tribulation occurs. There will be a lot of deception going on, because obviously Satan doesn't want us to know that we're in a tribulation. We do know that, right? Satan's goal is to convince us that we're not in a tribulation, that it's not happening, or there's not going to be one. In whatever way he can deceive us, he is going to deceive us from being able to see and understand and comprehend what Jesus is saying here. Satan has been working really hard over the years to deceive us so that we don't believe or understand anything that Jesus is talking about. We've learned how to take Scripture out of context and move things around and not see the chronological order of things. We've taught ourselves how to do that. But Jesus is still speaking in chronological order from beginning to end. And he's saying immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened. We will see the sun darken. We will see the moon not give its light. And we will see stars fall from heaven. And the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then, I'll say that one more time. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. The sign that he just spoke about. He said, as lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also will the coming of the Son be. After the tribulation, the sun's going to be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn. And they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And then he will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Now please remember, I'm going to say it one more time. Jesus is speaking in chronological order. Okay? From the beginning to the end. He's telling them a story of how things are going to take place. He's not deceiving them in any way. He's not lying to them in any way. He's giving them the exact order of how things are going to take place. And he's telling his disciples, first off, do not be deceived. No matter what. It's most important, remember that. A lot of things are going to happen. He goes on to say no one knows the hour, not even the angels, only God knows. But we're not going to get into that right now. Right now, what I want us to know and what I want to point out here is that Jesus has told us what's going to happen in order. And he is not coming back. There will be no rapture until after the tribulation. That's what he just said here. He says immediately, verse 29, I'm reading in Matthew chapter 24, verse 29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then the tribes of the earth will mourn. And then he will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his elect. There will be a sound of a great trumpet. Paul describes a trumpet. This is when the trumpet occurs. Okay? It's after the tribulation. Jesus himself spoke these words. They are His words. They are the truth. You can't take them out of context. You can't manipulate them. You can't take them out of order. If you just simply read what He said, the words of God spoke the truth. This concludes part 3 of our 4-part study of the Rapture Revelation. I want to thank you for listening up to this point. We have one more part to our 4-part series. This last part will truly open your eyes, and you will see the truth about the rapture and what Jesus actually said about the end times. Thank you again for listening, and I look forward to speaking to you again in part 4.